Welcome, everyone, to this historical explainer. Today, we're tracing basically the grandest story ever told, the incredible timeline of us. We're going to journey from our very earliest ancestors, the ones who were just figuring out how to strike two stones together, which was literally the ancient equivalent of the latest tech drop, all the way to the builders of the world's great early civilizations. It's a massive, truly fascinating timeline, and we're going to break it all down so you can see exactly how we survived, adapted, and eventually thrived. Okay, let's dive into this. It's absolutely mind-blowing to realize that over 99% of human history, and we're talking spanning millions of years here, falls into the category of prehistory. That means it happened way before anyone actually invented writing. For 99% of our existence, we left zero diaries, no treaties, no written records at all. Everything we know about this vast stretch of time relies purely on physical clues, things like stone tools, ancient weapons, pottery, and buried bones. It's really only that tiny 1% sliver at the very end that represents the time where we actually have written texts to guide us. To make sense of this massive timeline, we're going to follow a clear 6-step roadmap today. We'll start with life before written records, then move to the dawn of human evolution, followed by the stages of the Stone Age. After that, we'll look at early humans in India, the whole farming and Neolithic Revolution, and wrap it all up with the rise of great civilizations. First up, Section 1, Before Written Records. When you don't have text to read, historians and archaeologists essentially have to act like detectives, piecing together a silent crime scene. The invention of writing changed everything, right? It officially marked the start of the historical period about 5,000 years ago. Scripts like the Sumerian cuneiform in Mesopotamia or Egyptian hieroglyphics have actually been totally deciphered by scientists. And in India, the Brahmi script emerged a bit later, around 400 BCE, famously used by Emperor Ashoka on structures like the Sanchi Stupa, and we can read that too. But the Harappan or Indus-Saraswati Civilization left behind this incredible pictographic script on their seals, and to this day, it remains totally undeciphered. It's a fascinating, completely unsolved mystery. There's just so much we still don't know about these brilliant people, simply because we haven't cracked their code yet. Moving right along to Section 2, the dawn of human evolution. To understand where we're going, we really need to understand how we physically and mentally became the creatures we are today. Now, what's really interesting here is drawing a clear line between two different types of evolution that were actually happening at the exact same time. On one hand, we've got biological evolution. This is the physical transformation of our bodies and our genes over millions of years, going from ancient ancestors like Australopithecus all the way to us, Homo sapiens. But on the other hand, we have cultural evolution. And honestly, this is where the magic really happens. This is all about our ancestors adapting to crazy climate shifts, inventing new tools, and discovering how to actually harness natural resources. So while our bodies were physically changing, our survival skills and our intellect were just skyrocketing. Let's trace this chronologically. The story kicks off in the Old World, Africa, Asia, and Europe. About 3.3 million years ago, our ancestors, specifically Homo habilis, the handyman, who were basically the ultimate ancient DIYers, started making the very first stone tools. Fast forward to 2 million years ago, and Homo erectus, an early human who walked fully upright, starts migrating out of Africa toward Asia and Europe. Then, roughly 1.25 million years ago, the ancestors of Homo sapiens, our direct family line, began spreading globally, ultimately surviving past other groups like the Neanderthals. And right around that 12,000-year mark, a massive climate shift completely altered the trajectory of our entire species. But how did we actually survive those millions of years? Well, that brings us to Section 3, Stages of the Stone Age. Let's look at the incredible technological leaps our ancestors made using literally the most basic material available: rocks. This sequence is essentially a perfect map of human problem solving. We start off in the Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age, where we were purely hunters and gatherers, relying on really simple stone tools. Then we transition to the Mesolithic, where we start shrinking our tools down to make them a lot more precise. But the huge leap, the absolute game changer, happens in the Neolithic Age with the invention of farming. From there, it's basically a race of metallurgy. The Chalcolithic Age mixes stone with copper, the Bronze Age gives rise to organized cities and trade networks, and finally, the Iron Age brings advanced weapons and robust, complex societies. It's just a direct, totally logical staircase of human innovation. Let's zoom in on that critical Mesolithic phase for a second, starting around 12,000 years ago. Earth's climate began to warm up. Thick ice sheets retreated, and these huge, expansive grasslands and forests bloomed.
This changing environment literally forced humans to adapt. I mean, they needed to hunt smaller, faster animals, so they invented microliths, these tiny, highly efficient, razor-sharp stone tools. They also started looking at rivers and lakes, adding aquatic food like fish to their diets. As a result, the population absolutely boomed, and with better survival techniques, early humans suddenly had the time and the mental bandwidth for actual creativity.
You can actually see this creativity deep in the heart of India, in Madhya Pradesh at the Bhimbetka rock shelters. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it features hundreds of vibrant, incredible cave paintings. Early humans weren't just hiding out in these shelters, they were decorating them. They painted scenes of their hunts, their community life, their daily routines. It's pretty amazing because it shows us that Homo sapiens weren't just surviving anymore. They were developing culture, communication, and a true appreciation for art. This brings us to Section 4, Early Humans in India. Let's shift our focus entirely to the earliest archaeological discoveries, right here in the Indian subcontinent. So the crucial point is that the Indian subcontinent has been a hub of human ingenuity for a very, very long time. In fact, the earliest human settlements here date back nearly 2 million years. At sites like Atirampakam in Tamil Nadu and Isampur in Karnataka, archaeologists have unearthed these ancient stone tools, hand axes, cleavers, choppers. And these weren't just random rocks. They were the multi-tools of the ancient world. They were meticulously crafted for hunting animals, slicing meat, digging up edible roots, and extracting highly nutritious bone marrow. Early humans in India were incredibly resourceful survivors. And now we arrive at Section 5, Farming and the Neolithic Revolution. If there's one single turning point in this entire explainer that changed the world forever, I promise you, it's this one. The Neolithic Revolution is exactly what it sounds like, an absolute revolution in how human beings existed. Instead of endlessly wandering around just hoping to collect food and follow animal herds, humans actually developed a deep understanding of weather and seasons. They figured out how to domesticate plants and animals. They started producing their own food, breeding animals to suit their needs, and settling down into permanent farming villages. Farming wasn't just, a new chore. It was the ultimate mastery over nature. But it's important to note, this agricultural revolution didn't just happen overnight everywhere at once. Different regions cleverly adapted to whatever crops grew best in their own backyards. In West Asia, early farmers focused on wheat and barley. Over in West Africa, North China, and various parts of India, millets became the go-to staple. Meanwhile, in the lush, watery environments of the Ganges Plains and South China, rice cultivation totally took over. Humans were just ingeniously domesticating their own local landscapes. Let's move on and see how this builds, because this agricultural shift triggered an unstoppable domino effect. Think about it. Once you transition from hunting to farming, you suddenly have a surplus of food. Well, you can't just leave extra grains sitting on the ground, right? So you invent earthen pottery of all shapes and sizes to store it safely. Because you now need to tend your crops and guard that stored food, you stop moving. You build a permanent house, which quickly becomes a village. And as those villages grow and start trading with each other, they inevitably become the foundation for massive civilizations. Which leads us perfectly to our grand finale, Section 6, the rise of great civilizations. This is exactly where small farming communities transform into magnificent, highly organized urban centers. In the Indian subcontinent, this story truly takes shape along the Bolan River at a site called Mehrgarh in modern-day Pakistan, dating way back to around 7000 BCE. Mehrgarh is considered the oldest Neolithic site in the subcontinent, and here people weren't just surviving, they were building. They constructed homes and massive granaries out of sun-dried mud bricks. They farmed wheat and barley, raised sheep, goats, and cattle. Fascinatingly, they were also the first in the region to transition into the Chalcolithic age by making actual copper objects. Plus, they had a really keen eye for beauty, crafting these stunning, rich ornaments out of deep blue lapis lazuli, reddish-brown carnelian, and seashells. They buried their dead with respect and lived these incredibly rich, textured lives. And the success of Mehrgarh wasn't just some isolated incident. By roughly 2500 BCE, this incredible Neolithic culture had spread extensively. Sites like Sangan show us that advanced farming communities were taking root across the majority of the Indian subcontinent. People were successfully merging agriculture, animal husbandry, and brand new technologies to create incredibly prosperous, settled societies. All of this momentum, all of this copper working, the massive farming surplus, the large-scale pottery production in those fertile alluvial plains, it all culminated around the year 2600 BCE. This was the momentous dawn of a true urban powerhouse, the Indus-Saraswati, or Harappan civilization. We literally went from striking rocks together in caves to building one of the greatest ancient urban societies the world has ever seen. But remember how we started this explainer? Despite this incredible journey of evolution and innovation, a massive piece of our history is still locked away. The Harappan civilization left behind thousands of pictographic seals, and we still cannot read a single one of them. So I leave you with this. What incredible stories, what lost knowledge, and what ancient secrets do you think are still waiting to be discovered once we finally decipher those symbols? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating timeline with me. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.